Well, hello and happy Friday. Welcome to episode 38 of the MNC Communications Move the Stairs podcast. We are recording on a beautiful, absolutely gorgeous spring Friday, May 7th, isn't it? It's 7th, 2021. And we are so happy that you have joined us on this conversation. Each week, we share with you brand protection PR strategies for your CBD business to tackle some of your biggest public relations challenges. Jordan Sherman, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. We have entered the month of May. It's our first record in May. Yeah, right. Beautiful weather for now, but here in Colorado, of course, we're going to get snow next week because that's just how it goes here in May.
Yeah.
But every month, we introduce a new topic and a new theme. And the theme this month is, going forward and turning your CBD brand from just another company into an industry and thought leader. And that is just so important in today's day and age. Thought leadership is, kind of a PR inside baseball reference. So we're going to be sure to kind of explain that in depth a little bit later on. So we'll get to that in just a few moments. But specifically today, we're going to talk about how your brand's messaging and how retooling or rebuilding or starting from scratch and building your brand's message can help you achieve brand protection PR and help you on your journey on the way to thought leadership.
Well, and we're going to get into thought leadership, but I think that you're absolutely right. Taking your CBD company from just one of many to the one, that's what we're trying to help you do today. And to do that, we're going to break this down into mini conversations. First, we're going to revisit what it means to be a thought leader and explain that term and help you establish the framework of your brand's outreach using the MNC 4Cs. And we talk about that document a lot. Then we're going to give you examples of great brand messaging as kind of a breadcrumb path to follow as you brainstorm and think about how you're going to use those 4Cs to incorporate into the look and feel of your brand's digital footprint going forward. And finally, we are going to help you build pillars. So lots of buzzwords today, Jordan, but pillars of messaging to build your brand around.
And you're going to hear us mention the 4Cs. I think our count is already up to like 2, 3, maybe even 4 mentions in 3 minutes into the podcast record.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's going to be our free downloadable one sheet. We do publish these recordings via blog every Friday. So you can get this one sheet today and every Friday. Just check out movethestairs.com, click into the most recent blog post, and you will see a link to that 4Cs downloadable. So without further ado, let's get started building out the framework of your brand's messaging. And what's so important, Sarah, is when you become a thought leader in your space, you've achieved a critical component of brand protection for your CBD company. And when we say thought leadership, we mean somebody who has an authoritative voice in an industry where they are considered one of, if not the primary, go-to expert. And we've talked about thought leadership before on the Move the Stairs podcast. You can go back and listen to that to dig a little bit deeper into it. But these are the people who are constantly on the precipice of the latest developments in their industry. They're almost always willing to offer
in the press.
Yeah, in the press. That's right. They're almost always willing to offer their opinion and insight into what's new and what's happening now. So, that quote I just read, we pulled that from a previous podcast. So again, please go back and listen to that on demand if you're still kind of working through the process of what being a thought leader is. But man, when you have achieved that, when you speak, your voice like echoes, it carries volumes, decibels, if you will, it carries, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'm never one to let a good pun get away. So on the precipice and in the press is exactly what you are trying to create. I know, sorry. But that's what thought leadership is. And that level of trust by the media in particular, that translates to your customers, your potential customers, stakeholders, your colleagues, maybe other people in the industry. That is incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful. And it really gives you a huge level of brand protection PR, especially if and when something negative happens, that it directly or indirectly puts your brand into the spotlight. It's kind of like, Jordan, having a little bit of a bank account,
Mhm.
right, with your stakeholders, with your customers. They're like, gosh, I know that company. They are so direct and forward and honest and transparent. And, the president of the company, the CEO is out there. I hear from them. They're nice people. They work hard. I really, something's going on in the industry, but I want to hear from them what they think, what their opinion is. They're going to be honest and truthful with me. And the media, having the media know that they can call you to get an honest and straightforward, transparent information about something that maybe isn't going right. It's a really, really powerful component of brand protection.
Right. And it's, once you establish that level of thought leadership, hopefully in that, kind of 2-minute shotgun explanation there, the wheels are turning in your brain at how powerful that actually is. But it doesn't happen overnight. And we're going to talk about a few brands where they have worked on that a little bit later on in the podcast. But you don't have to necessarily put yourself in a position where you got to cram it all into one brainstorm session either. And we like to start with the M&C 4Cs. And we encourage you to please download this document. The one that we have online is geared toward COVID and masks, but you can take that same framework and really use those 4Cs to, build messaging behind your brand. So I guess we've talked about it enough, Sarah. We should outline what they are. The 4Cs: clear,
You think? Yeah.
compassionate, consistent, and conversational. Those are the 4Cs. They make up the 4Cs. And if you
Right.
can include these 4Cs in your tone of conversation, whether it's on digital media, your website, social media, and even traditional media, if you're getting quoted in the newspaper or you're providing a quote for television, that's important too. It's going to help you develop a brand digital footprint, kind of the first building block, and shape the overall message for your CBD company's brand message to build upon.
Yeah, and so let's go through these really quickly, because as you mentioned, these are available on the movethestairs.com website. But clear, this one's pretty straightforward. Guys, keep it simple. Keep your thoughts one thought per sentence. Keep it really clear, straightforward, and focused. Compassionate. Put yourself in your audience's shoes, right? Your product is not the hero. You are not the hero. Your audience, your customers are. So your outreach is not about how great and wonderful your product is, and it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how you can help your customers. Consistent. This is the one that I think is the biggest challenge, quite
It
honestly.
is.
And you've got some data on this down below, so I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
steal your thunder there. But research does tell us that modeling the desired behavior will help with the desired outcome. So consistency, consistency, consistency of outreach, and making sure that your outreach on social media or on your blog posts, wherever you are getting the biggest bang for your buck as far as outreach goes, it's not just a one and done or an every now and again or when I get to it, or oh gosh, I know that I really need to do that, and probably do a blog post once a year or a couple of social posts now and again. Consistent, 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 consistent. I'm not sure how many times I can say it.
How
But it
about at
is
least
that
7
important.
times? Hint, hint.
Hint, hint. And we'll tell you why in a second. But the other thing is conversational. And this goes with clear, right? So clear is totally straightforward and simple. You're not using a bunch of jargon. You're not using complicated terms that people may not have access to, they may not have heard before. But conversational, you're having a conversation. We like to say, think of your grandma. Explain this so that your grandma can understand it. It's direct, simple, free of jargon. It's friendly. It's open, non threatening. You're not trying to impress people with your incredible wealth of knowledge. You're just trying to bring them with you on your journey. And you've got to do it with really conversational, clear messaging to start out with, because people aren't at the same level that you are.
Right. And when we produce that one sheet, again, free for download, movethestairs.com, our emphasis was behind masks. And even though we're starting to see some changes with policies, and it depends on where you are by state, as of May 7th, the implementation of the 4Cs in your brand's messaging is really going to help you. So if you kind of pick away the mask specifics in that, you can kind of get down to the guts of the house, so to speak, the foundation, all of your support beams, and that's where those 4Cs live. So you can really adapt it to just about anything that you're trying to get out there for your brand.
Right. So I think that's a great point, and it really dovetails with the Move the Stairs philosophy. So we call this the Move the Stairs podcast, movethestairs.com. Hopefully you've heard the story by now, but if not, Move the Stairs simply means basically make lemonade out of lemons. Whatever life throws at you, whatever challenges are in your way, and we know in the CBD industry, there are many, many challenges to communicating that are very well known. It's a real challenge to get your message out, but it doesn't mean that you cannot get your message out. It means that you need to be creative, that you need to think about, how are the ways that I can communicate, that I can share my message? What can I do instead of, oh, I'm so frustrated about what I cannot do? Move the Stairs means you figure it out. You figure out a way to communicate. And that's really the philosophy that Diane Mulligan, she's not with us today, she's off today, but our president has instilled from the very, very beginning of MNC, is this philosophy of move the stairs and figure out what you can do.
Well said. I think Diane somewhere is, applauding with that right rendition of the Move the Stairs story. So I've been looking forward to this segment, Sarah, because I get to grill you. And even in our rundown, I didn't put the answers to any of these questions I'm about to ask you. So for folks listening on the podcast, we're putting Sarah on the spot, and I'm so excited.
Oh,
so we're going to talk about great examples of brand messaging, and just going to have a little fun with it. So what I'm going to do is read off a few very well-known brand phrases, catchphrases, I guess, if you will, and you're going to try to guess the company. Are you ready for this?
All right. You really are putting me on the spot. All right, go.
All right, just do it.
All right, that is Nike.
Yep. Ding, ding. We are one for one. I've got 5 total, so I don't want to take up the entire segment with it.
I didn't study. I didn't prep. Oh, my gosh.
We'll see. Yeah, Sarah didn't study for the test. We'll see if she's one of those students who can go about not studying and still pass. We'll find out here shortly.
Right. Give me a grade at the end.
How about it gives you wings?
This one I'm less sure about, but I'm going to make the guess here that isn't this Red Bull?
It is Red Bull. You are absolutely correct. 2 for 2. Not bad.
Woo, good.
Okay. How about this one? I'm loving it.
Wait, now, isn't that... Because don't you have to hum the little song? Dun, 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 dun. Right?
I'm not going to, because I don't want people to tune out of this podcast, but
okay. But that one's McDonald's. And you know what I love, actually? Their new ads have this really gravelly, like movie announcer voice guy going, dun, 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 I'm loving it. And it's just kind of a new hip take on, what has been their branding message for years and years. And I noticed it. So, again, as we're talking about building branding.
Yeah. I mean, right? Hey, they've been around for 70 years. So you got to do something to stay hip with the times, I guess. Right.
Right. For sure.
All right. How about this one? The worldwide leader in sports.
Oh, okay. I'm not the biggest sports person in the world.
That's why I tossed this in here. I said, we got to get Sarah on one of these.
All right. I'm going to here's the thing. I'm flat guessing here, but I'm thinking that the worldwide leader in sports would be ESPN.
Yeah, you got it. Absolutely. Spot on. 4 for
My
4.
husband won't divorce me now. Okay.
Yeah, right. His Jayhawks are playing on there far too often for you to not know that. So, all right,
Yes,
last
they
one.
are. Rock
Yeah,
chalk.
that's right. All right, last one. You're not you when you're hungry.
Okay. Are you talking to me? Because I'm on a diet this week and I haven't been me all week. But that, I will tell you, because I really identify it this week, that is Snickers.
Yeah, 5 for 5. Hot dang. Nice
Not that I've
job.
had a Snickers in 2 weeks, or
Right.
actually much longer than that, nor will I have one for months.
But it's funny because that is my go-to when I am on a grocery store run or whatever, waiting for knowing that dinner is not for a couple of hours. I'm like, it's got peanuts in it, and that'll hold
Healthy,
me over. So yeah,
healthy food.
exactly. So what's the purpose of this exercise for everyone listening who's about ready to turn a channel on us? These companies
Sorry.
are all incredibly well known. They produce products that are bought and sold globally, and they've been around for a really long time. And, we don't expect the listeners of this podcast to have that type of global recognition. I mean, if you do, hats off to you. That's fantastic. But especially given where we are in the CBD industry, it's not necessarily the snack, the beverage, footwear, etc. And the CBD industry is still relatively young too. So there's still a lot of growth to be had there. So it's not to say you won't have that global recognition in the future where you have that one catchy brand phrase. But it would be nice too if everyone within the CBD industry wouldn't necessarily mind having their brand recognition of a company like Charlotte's Web either, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I hope nobody would turn their nose up at that.
And or should they? But here's the thing: these companies didn't enjoy messaging and branding success overnight. In most cases, well, in all of those cases, they had to work at it. They were using the 4 Cs, even though they may not have known it.
Mhm.
They probably enjoyed some luck along the way. But let's take Nike here as an example. Co-founder of Nike, Phil Knight, combined his love of track and his master's degree in business, not a bad thing to have, to found a sneaker company that could really inexpensively and effectively produce running shoes for people here in the States. And so we've got a purpose, we've got a product to benefit athletes that were produced by someone who really understood what those athletes needed. So, great product, great start to a company, but that does not develop branding.
Exactly. And great information here from Brand Minds. That's where I've sourced this from, and I've included a link into our blog post. You can go and read the entire Nike story there. But the company had rebranded from Blue Ribbon Sports to Nike based on the company's first employee having a dream the night before about Nike. And, for those who are long removed from 8th grade Greek mythology, such as myself, Nike is the Greek goddess of victory. So no surprise there, it's stuck. And I think what the Brand Minds pointed out, which I think is really important here, the K in Nike really sticks. It's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say that, even though it's a 4-letter word, it's like, wow, I mean, that really sticks.
Well, and I think I will say, because it's Greek, there's a little, you feel sort of, I don't know, learned or
Yeah,
sophisticated. You're like, Nike, did you know that's the Greek god of victory?
right.
Like it's just, there's a branding element to that.
As you're crossing the finish line.
As you streak across the finish line far before anyone else. So what about that just do it slogan? Now, I think that's a great slogan because boy, it's simple. It looks great. It sounds great. It's straightforward. It's short. It's, like one syllable words. It offers hope, encouragement. It inspires confidence. And it's not like I'm a winner or I'm the best or, you know what I mean? It really is that sort of inclusive slogan that says you're winning by getting it done. I don't care if you're out there taking your first steps after your, rehab or your, just getting moving, trying to lose weight or maybe you're a world-class athlete. just do it means just get your fanny out there and make it happen. And you are the goddess of victory crossing the finish line, right?
That's right. Absolutely. So you have the purpose. You've got a really cool catchphrase, got an awesome company name. And lastly, I want to bring in the Michael Jordan effect. I mean, who didn't grow up in the 80s and 90s and not know the name Michael Jordan? In fact, I remember sitting in first grade and we had a smaller class. So it was kindergarten, first grade, and second grade all combined. And I sat next to a student whose name was Michael. And then I sat on his right, and I'm Jordan. So, it was kind of the Michael Jordan thing. We all knew who he was, even though we were, 7 and 8 years old. So, but he signed a sneaker deal with Nike in the 80s and 90s, again, synonymous with him. So we've got the driven founder, we've got a catchy company name, and a major influencer. So is it really any surprise that, with a little bit of luck and some hard work, that it's a multi-billion-dollar company?
Well, and so let's apply this right now to CBD companies, because CBD companies are in the very, very, very early stages of building that kind of brand recognition, that kind of brand message. And so there are many, many challenges, as we know, to communicating about CBD. So where does that leave us? There was an industry study just recently published. We shared it on our social media last week or week before. That looked at CBD impacts on the liver. Now, preliminary study, it still needs to be peer reviewed. The FDA hasn't weighed in on it yet, but the data showed that there is not at certain levels. So this is really wonderful news and a promising study. And it's going to be peer reviewed, released for peer review as well. So if you are looking for brand, establishing that credibility, that transparency, that brand messaging, taking a piece of news like this and just running with it and saying, CBD is totally safe and it's fine and won't hurt. No, that's not what we're saying. And that's not what you're saying. Mm-hmm. But you can share some of this information very carefully and strategically with your audience to say, look, here's some information. Here's what it means. It doesn't mean this, but it does mean this. And here are links to it. Here's who's saying this. You're being very transparent about the information that's out there. And what that is doing is building credibility and transparency in your brand, that you're sharing data as it comes out very carefully, very thoughtfully, precisely. And that can help be one of those core components of your brand message.
So really quick, next week, for those who subscribe to our Move the Stairs podcast, we're going to be talking about how you can take the next step in building your brand's message with members of the media. Remember at the very beginning of this, we talked about how powerful the press is in establishing yourself as a thought leader. So if you have any questions ahead of time, by all means, feel free to drop us a line. But I do think, Sarah, that this is a really good segue into working toward building your brand's pillars, one of our buzzwords that we like to use, right? So with an industry like CBD, where we have a lot of new information coming out, we have regulations that say you can do one thing and not another thing. Sometimes that varies by state. A lot of things are moving and shaking here. So if you're looking to say, hey, let's build one of our brand messaging pillars on some of this new information, whether it's studies, research, whatever the case may be, you can absolutely do that using the 4 C's. But again, you have to be a little careful with this, as you were alluding to just a few minutes ago.
Well, and here's what I love. So because I'm going to go for every pun, Jordan, every single one, you know me. Okay, so we're talking about our brand pillars, and the data you have pulled here comes from Column 5 Media, right? Mm-hmm. Brand messaging pillars are a crucial element of your brand messaging and a particularly useful tool for content creators. So there are basically 3 major themes: benefits or selling points that make your brand unique. Mm-hmm. So, at M&C, our brand pillars are CBD brand protection, media training, and crisis communications. right? And then brand protection is the roof on that three-legged stool. I know that stools don't have a roof, but work with me here. So brand protection, everything we do builds toward that roof that protects your brand. And the three pillars are, the three service areas that we really concentrate on to build brand protection PR. Now, just like we talked about a minute ago, if scientific studies and breakthroughs like the CBD and liver study are important to you, and they are as a CBD business, using the 4Cs can take a theme like transparency of scientific research on CBD and break it down into a way that resonates with the audience you're trying to reach. Because so many CBD companies are in the health, wellness, cosmeceutical space. So we're talking about people. We are talking to people who are going to be particularly interested in the scientific data that is coming out on a really accelerating timeline behind CBD, right?
Yeah. So how might you do this? And we're getting really specific saying, hey, we're going to put ourselves in your shoes for a moment here and take this, piece of research or data that has come out and say, maybe this is how the MNC would look at it and advise one of our clients. But if that's a pillar that you want to build upon for your company, by all means, I think it's a fantastic one, especially with all the new research coming out and, new studies cropping up every day. It really doesn't hurt to have a CMO on your staff.
Explain CMO.
Chief Medical Officer. Sorry.
Thank you.
Clear,
Jordan. Clear.
Exactly. Be clear. If you have a chief medical officer on your staff, they can be clear and they can have an authoritative voice and to offer insight and analysis into these types of studies. And transparency, I think, in 2021 is more important than it ever has been to your consumers. And especially if you look at the type of people who use CBD, they're into the health and the wellness, and chances are they're into transparency also. So this gives you a really great opportunity behind an authoritative voice to offer expertise through your chief medical officer, whether it's online or on your social media. And again, be careful with your social media. I know you'll talk about this in a minute, Sarah, but it's a great opportunity for you if you want to build on that pillar.
Right. So compassionate is one of the other 4Cs. And we've talked about it before in this podcast. And really, I think I don't know how many podcasts, I don't even want to think about it. This is where you are putting yourself in your customer's shoes. So instead of, we offer CBD that does this, or we offer products that do that, or, we have the best, or we have the purest, or we have the whatever. You've got to put yourself in your customer's shoes and reflect what might be important to your customers. The beautiful packaging, I'll tell you, I get AOC, facial oil, and it is an experience to open up that packaging. It's so gorgeous. It's well packaged. I feel special when I open up this package that gets sent to me.
It's an experience.
Right? It's an absolute experience. And so, our customers love the experience. They love how it makes them feel from the moment they open the package going forward. There's a message that you can run with, right? Now, we all know, and let us repeat, consistency, that you cannot say that CBD helps treat, diagnose, or cure various symptoms, right? We all know this. So let's take this one step further. The CBD on liver function study. So you can come out and say, here was this study. You could come out and say, gosh, it's great that there's a study like this, that we're getting new information every day. You can share links to that information. You can say, this is a great step in the right direction. All of those things you can safely say. You can talk about the frequency of research now compared to a few years ago. You can talk about studies that the FDA has looked at. You can talk about studies that are in the pipeline. So you can talk about these things, but you need to be careful, strategic, specific, right? And you need to put your audience in the driver's seat of the information to say, here's what's available now.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what this may mean to you, but you are staying really, really, really
Right.
carefully in between the lines.
You're walking that tightrope for sure, just to make sure you don't draw the ire of the FDA. And we know that they've already sent out warning letters in 2021. So continue to be careful with that. Let's move on to the third of the fourth C, consistency. And we have referenced the marketing rule of 7 on this podcast, hopefully more than 7 times. I think more than 7 times. And just to sum that up, it's somebody needs to hear something 7 times, whether you're talking about a product or a brand, before it starts to stick. It starts to resonate in their brain. So whether you're trying to adapt your brand's messaging pillars, or you're starting from scratch, the consistency of this message matters. So what does this mean? It does not mean turning on the digital fire hose and you're giving a 12-hour dissertation on the history of CBD and mankind all at once on your website or your social media pages. But it does mean that you're working toward a consistent cadence of information, either on your website or on your social media pages, without overwhelming your consumer, because ultimately you want that trail of breadcrumbs to be tasty for them. So they're going to keep coming back for more information. So whether this is posting for 7 consecutive weeks on a given day, we like to do this with our content calendars for our clients, choosing a daily theme. So maybe it's a medical minute, something along those lines, or it's going beyond that, because keep in mind, the organic algorithms for social media, and by organic, I mean when you're not throwing money into the pot to make your posts pop and show up in people's feeds, if you're not putting money into it, the chances are that somebody's going to see something for 7 consecutive weeks without necessarily navigating to your pages or your website is slim to none. So you may have to double this or triple this. So you're posting things for 14 days or 14 weeks or 21 weeks. So having a really rock solid plan in putting out information content can be really helpful for you to build that consistency in your digital footprint. And one more thing, Sarah, before I pass the baton here, Facebook's algorithms, they are not a big fan of the whole start-stop thing. If you start, you got to keep that train on the tracks and keep feeding the coal into the engine, so to speak, every now and again, so that you can keep the algorithms happy, so that your organic reach, as low as it is going to be anyway, doesn't get dinged.
Yeah. And so conversational, and Jordan, we've been awfully conversational in this podcast. We need to wrap it up, because as you and I tend to be. But you remember Charlie Brown's teacher? Wah, 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 wah. So, right, this is the whole point of keeping it conversational. There's a lot of scientific information. There's a lot of detail. And I think that there's a tendency to say, look how smart I am. Look how much I know. Look how seriously we take this as a company. Look at all this background. Look how far we are down the road in this industry.
I don't care.
Well,
I don't care.
Make
me care.
Make me care. But think about your customers. How many potential customers don't know that CBD is legal?
Right.
Like you have to, and not only that, maybe your current customers do, but maybe your potential customers don't.
Right.
So this is why we talk about having multiple pillars of information that you talk about on a regular basis. Because remember, you're not just growing like a little group of customers that are going to come along with you. You want to be growing and adding new people. And you've got to make sure, it's like meet them where they're at, or whatever that phrase is. And you've got to make sure that you're not crossing these lines from the FDA and getting into trouble there. But you're keeping it conversational, and you're making sure to go back and scoop up the newbies, right? And bring them with you with that really clear, straightforward conversational information about stuff that you probably feel like, I have covered this ad nauseum. Guess what? Do it again, and then do it again.
I couldn't agree more, because if you're just blasting me with stuff that's over my head, not going to care. I'm going to keep scrolling.
Right.
That is just kind of where we are, unless somebody's really in tune with the information that they want to see. And by all means, if you have that back and forth with them in the comment section, that's fantastic.
Right.
But in the original post is not where you necessarily want to dive into the 401 level informative stuff. So really quick.
Wonk.
Yeah, exactly. In thinking about the CBD liver study, or just studies in general, if that was going to be one of your brand messaging pillars, there are any number of directions your company could go with this type of research or outreach to your audience. The key here is to identify the other major themes that you want to build upon, so that those 3-4 pillars you can put together and work together, so that you're reaching your target audience or your target audiences, if that's going to be the case too. And if you can tackle this, you're going to have started to build that digital footprint, the digital building block for your company's brands, for your company brand message to get out there before you even pick up the phone and talk to a reporter.
Right. And that's a content map, which, we've sort of mentioned before, and maybe we need to do a whole podcast on how to build a content map. But that just means that you've got content that you talk about Mondays, and a topic that you talk about Tuesdays, and another topic on Wednesday, and whatever it might be. So we're going to wrap this up, because I know we've thrown a lot at you today. To briefly recap this Move the Stairs podcast, we have talked about what it means to be a thought leader and the framework that you can use to really develop and push your brand's message. We have talked about some of the existing brands that are great examples. We talked about Nike, Snickers. You can tell I'm starving, and use those as an example to think about where you can go with a really consistent brand message. And finally, we talked about how you can identify pillars, topics that you talk about over and over and over to build a consistent, coherent, and yet, different, interesting, engaging, compelling brand message, and put it into action.
And all those together will help you get you on your way to being a thought leader in your industry. So we thank you so much for joining us for this week's Move the Stairs podcast. We are always here to help you protect your CBD business with Brand Protection PR. If you have any questions ahead for next week's podcast about how you can handle that reporter interview, feel free to shoot us an email. Until then, we'll see you next time.